Hello, my lovely patrons, and welcome to February 2018's Patreon tutorial video. Today we're going to be doing an oil painting walkthrough of my painting titled Intertwine. And just before I start, I wanted to let you know that the art supplies I'm using will be listed in the description below, along with links to purchase them if you're interested. Okay, so this piece is definitely an evening setting. It features a girl with her giant gray slash, I guess, purple cat, and they are sitting together in a grassy meadow at night underneath the clouds and the stars, and she's tying a ribbon to his tail. So for this piece, my main focus was to make sure I establish an atmosphere of like some sort of ethereal magic, where even in this vast empty world there's still little elements of beauty and wonder, and that even though they're seemingly alone, they can rely on each other for companionship and love. So I focused primarily on cool tones. For the sky, I used varying shades of pink, or pinks and blues, and also dioxazine purple, which shows up a lot in this piece because it is just a really beautiful saturated purple that makes any shadow have a lot more life. So instead of just having a black shadow, I try to make the shadows contain hints of blues and purples to just give the piece more color and more vibrancy. The cat is made up of the similar colors as the sky. So I kind of do this a lot with my paintings to establish a coherent look and feel. I use similar colors, just kind of either muted or, you know, darkened or lightened, depending on where I'm using it. So in the sky, I'm using like luminous opera, radiant magenta, radiant turquoise, Prussian blue, and dioxazine purple, of course, and a little bit of black. And then for the cat, I use the same colors, but I mixed more purple so that the purple can stand out. And of course, it's a lot lighter, so I incorporated more white. Same with her hair. I included the same shade of pink that I used for the sky, but I made sure to make it more pastel and muted with by adding more white and black to make it kind of grayed out. And the shadows of her hair and her body will also contain the same purple that's used on the cat. This is because I feel like when the light bounces off the cat, it should also be reflected on her because she is snuggling right up to it. And this is a trick you can kind of incorporate into any of your pieces. If she's sitting on like green grass, or if she's next to a purple cat, don't be afraid to incorporate those same colors on her body. It'll make the feeling more real and just give the piece an overall consistency. This is kind of how you make sure that the subjects don't look like they've been photoshopped or just pasted onto the background, but that they're really in a part of the environment. Another trick for this piece that I used a lot was the shadows. So to make sure that she feels like a heavy, well, both the girl and the cat feel like heavy objects on top of the grass, I used a lot of cast shadows. And also the trick with cast shadows is you don't want to make them extend out too far. So when you make a shadow too far or spread too wide, it doesn't make the object casting the shadow feel like it's close to the ground or close to the surface. And then of course, if you make the shadow too narrow or too abrupt, too thin, it's not as apparent, and it also makes it feel like the lighting should be really harsh. So in this case, I know I have very soft like moonlight as my light source, so I wanted to find a balance of making sure the cast shadow was large enough that it didn't feel, you know, too hidden, and you know, it was obvious enough to give them a sense of weight, but also that it was small enough to not make them feel like they're levitating off the ground. For the skin tones, it's definitely a work in progress. They don't really start looking satisfactory to me until layer 2 or layer 3, but for this piece I mixed shades of red and green to make the kind of more peachy beige tones you see, and I made sure to keep that color palette very limited. I used the same green as I did on the grass, except on the grass I would mix, you know, brighter blues to make the grass pop out and maybe a little bit of yellow. And then on the skin, I would start with the same green, but I would mix cadmium red medium and white to give her a rosy human flesh tone. But even then, anytime I did shading or any sort of dark highlights, I would make sure to incorporate colors from her environment. The ribbons themselves, they're not actually fully white, even though I want the viewer to think they're white, but you got to make sure also to remember the way that they would reflect off of their environment. So for the ribbons, I incorporated a lot of shades of blues and purples, and I didn't want to make the ribbons look too multicolored, so I fixated more on the blues to make sure that they don't look like a weird desaturated, paper white ribbon, to make sure that they feel very integrated in the environment. But I ended up using actually a lot more blue, and the ribbons turned out a lot darker than I thought they would need to. But in the end, this is what worked, and this is what made them feel the most real. So with paintings, a lot of times, like, you don't have to paint what you think is right. You just have to paint what's right for the piece itself. And then, of course, with the cat, I really enjoyed working on his little furry hairs. So it's actually not super straightforward to me how to paint fur. Like, I really don't know how to describe it. It's very similar to painting hair, where you don't have to work on each individual strand, but rather try to focus on clumps and tufts. So with the same technique that I'm doing her hair, where I separate it into sections. If you see like the way her ponytail touches the ground, there's 3 main sections. And then I add a little sparse hairs that stand out, that are wispy and organic, to give the free-flowing, kind of natural feeling of hair. And same with the fur. Like, I start off with these big chunks. I use a bigger brush, and then I go back in with a finer brush to make small little highlights, small little pieces pop out. So also with the cat, I noticed as the painting went on, I was really adjusting the value of the cat. If I wanted him to be a little lighter or darker, it really depended on the girl. So as I made her darker and just built more layers on her, I also needed to adjust the cat, even though at some points I felt like the cat was already finished. So when I came in to add the details on the fur, I also took that opportunity to make the cat match the girl in terms of being able to bring her out and not drown her. As for the background elements, I kept them pretty loose and pretty abstract because I wanted the focus to be on the 2 main characters. So I didn't really bother with needing too many tiny little details. So with the leaves and the shrubbery, I used, again, similar blues as I did in the grass and in the sky. A lot of turquoise light, which is a color I got from Blick, mixed with a little bit of green to make the leaves pop but still seem cool. And then I actually just used cadmium red medium without mixing it to make the red little flowers pop. So the foreground elements were a similar vibe, except I wanted the foreground elements to have more detail and focus, because I thought since they're closer to the viewer, closer to the camera, they would definitely be a lot more in focus. And the grass is very similar to the cat hair, except with the cat hair, I wanted to make sure my strokes had a little curve to show the curvature of the cat's body, because it's round. But with the grass, I just kept the blades going very straight, but not all pointing straight up. You still want it to make it look very organic, so I had them going at an angle, but still keeping like a straight slope. And as for the shrubbery, I really don't have any specific plants in mind. I think these are general shapes that I see very commonly in leaves when I'm hiking or in photographs, so I just incorporated these shapes to make the world feel, close to Earth, but it doesn't really have to be Earth. And lastly, I added in the little daisies because I felt like the grass felt a little empty, and I wanted just some more whimsical, cheerful little elements. So the daisies were a really nice extra touch. They were made with just cadmium yellow medium for the centers and a little bit of white for the petals. And this is pretty much the entire piece. As you can see, this with the stars, you can really see the colors that I used for the sky and the environment individually without being blended. Those were all colors that I had used throughout the piece, so it was a nice final kind of cohesive touch. All right, and that is my painting walkthrough for the month of February. Thank you guys so much for all of your support and for being such great patrons. I hope to catch you guys next month and bring you lots more fun and useful rewards. So have a great day, have a great month, and I hope to see you guys soon. Bye-bye.